for joining us this morning.
Good morning. It is my pleasure.
How have you been?
I'm good. What about you?
We're managing by God's grace.
Great.
Let's look at corruption as a challenge in our parts. Generally, what would you make of this conversation in Ghana at the moment?
Well, corruption has been a problem for this country over several years. I'm talking about public sector corruption in particular. I'm aware the private sector or the petty corruption is also there. But as far as I'm concerned, I concern myself most or more with the public sector corruption, because the public sector sets the pace and creates the environment within which we all operate. I would like to say that I think corruption has become endemic. And if you look at the trend, it looks like successive governments are running a marathon in corruption. Each government takes it to a higher level, but the level to which we are now is actually unprecedented.
On what basis would you say the levels with which we are now are unprecedented?
If you look at the fact that we have stagnated at a failure zone of the corruption perception index, we have stagnated, which is bad in itself. But stagnating in a comfortable area or zone is okay. We have stagnated at a failure zone. Remember, it's 100% or it's a score over 100, and we are at 43, which you and I will know that if you score 43 in any examination, you have failed. So being stagnant at that level, and in addition to that, we hear and see almost every day issues of corruption or corruption related. Corruption is seen every day, almost on daily basis. New issues of corruption are coming. I find that disturbing. That's why I'm saying that the level at which we are today is so disturbing. And not just the number of corruption activities, but the volumes. Now you hear millions. You hear so many millions have been thrown into digging a pit, just an attempt at digging a foundation, which is not a foundation, it's just a hole which has been created. How can we use 58 or over 50 million US dollars to dig a pit? Just the digging. We have not even finished a foundation. How can we pay close to 12 million, that is 11.9 million for Quality Dam, and we don't have work started? How can we pay about 3 million US for sky trains, which we cannot see in Accra? A whole lot of them. It's mind-boggling where we are today.
Is it that we are not making any effort whatsoever to fight this, or is it because of people in power possibly being linked to this project? That is why it is so rampant at this point.
Yeah, this corruption we are seeing today is state-sponsored one. It is public sector corruption. It is corruption which is championed or led or supported by government itself. What Kwesi to him referred to as a looting brigade. So it is not that government is trying its best or fighting. No, government is actually behind most of this corruption. And you hear or see that most of these corruptions are being defended by officials in government. So it's government.
If we have governments, or if we have elements in governments so involved in almost all of these stories that we keep on hearing every now and then we are probably in no way going to fight this, or we are not even going to make an effort to fight this.
True. Corruption is a leadership problem. It is when the leader is asleep, or when the leader is corrupt, or when the leader supports corruption, that is when corruption strikes. So if the leadership of the country itself is engulfed with these corrupt practices or corruption-related activities, we are not going to see any progress unless leadership decides to say that no, enough. Let us use public resources for the benefit of the people, and ensuring that we do that, providing value for money, and we will hold people accountable. Or government decides to say that there are going to be consequences for misuse of public resources or being corrupt, we are not going to see any solution, action anytime.
The leader of the Republic as we speak is His Excellency Nana Addo Akuffo. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate any effort, that is, even if he is trying anything, in dealing with this menace?
Well, I would prefer not to rate him, but just to say that he is a failure as far as I am concerned.
Really?
Because this man who promised us that he was going to protect the public purse, is this what we mean by protecting public purse? He is the man who told he was going to use Anan's principle in fighting corruption. And today I'm sure Anas himself is at risk. This is the man who said, I'm not going to run a family and friend government. And that is exactly what he's doing. This is the man who told us he was going to put his presidency on the line to fight Galamsey. See what is happening. To me, I think his performance is not performance.
You served as Auditor General for a number of years, and you had to deal with issue after issue after issue. At some point, I mean, you were brutally kicked out. In recent times, there's been a ruling that the way you were booted out of office was improper. Do you think, on hindsight, that the decision to get you out was politically motivated?
Oh yes, it was politically motivated. People who cannot see through the lines or read in between the lines think that it was something administrative. No, politically motivated. Because remember, at that time, we were at the Supreme Court fighting the case of Crow and Associates, where I have surcharged senior minister Honorable Safumafo $1 million US. That case was there. That the time I have surcharged Zoom Lion 411 Ghana cedis for payments wrong done. And that case involved a lot of ministers or senior government of. And at that time, they had also seen what we call the management letter draft audit report for 2019. And this report was going to be issued after June. And election was coming in December. And so they thought it was necessary to kick me out so that they can have a break. Otherwise, it was not going to be easy. I remember I'd also commenced procurement audit, which is required by section 92 or 91 of the Procurement Act. And they have seen the draft in people who are going to be hated. So it was necessary for me to leave. And I left. So thereafter, they went to the civil society, sent the case to court, and the court also decided to sit on it in support of government from my point of view. First, I thought there were genuine reasons why they could not discuss or discharge that judgment, but later on reading the judgment, they were talking about the fact that if they ruled against, it will affect the Chief Justice and they themselves. So they were protecting themselves. So they decided to wait when it became impossible for me to continue doing my work before they gave me what is a Pyrrhic victory. That victory was a Pyrrhic one. It's a useless judgment. The judgment came just to support the president because, one, what does it do? It helps the president to protect those that he has appointed in that position, so they cannot be affected, and it protected themselves also. And it helped the government to not have those issues at the back during 2020 election. An issue which I thought if the Supreme Court was minded, within a week or two, maximum a month, they could have ruled on. They kept it for 3 years before coming out with it. So it's politically motivated. Forgive me, but I think the judiciary is also not helping us in some of these things, because they made us to know that justice delayed is justice denied, but they now deny people justice with impunity.
Are you in any way suggesting that you were being a stumbling block for top government officials and their nefarious activities?
I'm not suggesting. It is a categorical statement I made to the presidency that my audit was disturbing them. If you read my response to the leave letter, I categorically told the president that information that I've been receiving from his agents, especially the board chairman and other people who he has appointed to come and disturb my administration, shows clearly that my audits were disturbing his administration.
One of the conversations that arose in those times when let me say you were kicked out. I mean, I think it's fair to say that you were kicked out. Was the fact that as at the time you were appointed, probably close to the end of 2016, it was for those who, or for some elements within the Elephant organization, it was a way to keep an eye on affairs of the state, and you were not necessarily doing your job, but you were pursuing individuals. Would you agree to this?
That is an opinion, and they are entitled to their opinion, just as I'm also entitled to mine. But let me give you some points. It is only when I started holding the current administration accountable that those unnecessary and useless, baseless arguments came up. And that the president himself even said something like that I was serving the interests of the previous administration, etc. Now, I dare you, open to the State of the Nation address, which the president gave in Parliament in 2018. You see that the president praised the Auditor General. I was then the Auditor General, 2018. Again, go to the president's address at on 6 March 2018. In the course of addressing the nation, he praised the Auditor General. It was only when the table turned and I started holding, because up to that time, all the audits were on the past administration. This is what Ghanaians don't understand. That 2017 audits and early 2018 audits were all on the previous administration. Remember, audits are done in years. So it was on the previous administration, and we're the best of friends. And he encouraged what was happening. Actually, he even said that the statements made of my disallowances, if you remember, I disallowed 5.4 billion, which was liabilities accrued 1st December 2016. I disallowed it. And he even made a statement that that was enough for him to finance his free SHS or GSS, but the free education policy. It is only when I started holding his officials liable that this problem came. So they are entitled to their.
One of the conversations that almost always arise when it comes to issues of procurements primarily has to do with procurements in our part of the world. We have seen let's say products, everyday products that, let's say I would go to town, or I would go to do a business, and it would cost X amount of money. But this same business, if it ends up in the hands of any government agency, ends up being about 3 times the price, 4 times the price, 5 times the price, 6 times the price. Why does this happen?
I just gave it is because of corruption. Can you point out to any structure in Ghana that the foundation alone will cost us more than $50 million US? How many structures in Ghana even cost $50 million? So if the foundation, which is even not, can't even call it foundation, just the pit, or the foundation alone is costing us over $50 million US, then you can understand. During my tenure of office, we were doing a procurement audit. Some of the things which was going to impact that, there were procurements which were made, and in the course of our, we went back to the same institution that they bought the thing from. For instance, if they bought a cup of water, or maybe a chair from your shop, we went back to the same shop with the same specification and obtained a quote from the shop. And it will surprise you that things that were bought 3 or 4 years, if you check the price, current price, which should be higher, the current price at times is less than a fifth of the price at which we bought them. An example was even dustbins and those materials they use for disposing garbages. The same thing. We went into the vendor, his shop, and pretended we wanted to buy. So we asked for a quote, and they gave us a quote because we wanted to provide evidence. So we had that quote. And if you compare the quote to government, who was buying over 20,000 as against me who was buying one. People like, what is wrong with government? So it is a matter of corruption. The Public Procurement Act itself is not fit for purpose. If you look at the board is appointed by the president, and there are representatives from Minister of Finance appoints some number of people, the Attorney General send a representative. And I say, how can we have a board which is supposed to provide oversight over government being represented by these people? If the Attorney General goes there, but it's normally the Deputy Attorney General who normally goes there. When Governor Odami was Deputy Attorney General, he was on the Public Procurement Board. Now there's a lady, I've forgotten her full name, Dinah something, I've forgotten her name, who is also a Deputy Attorney General, who is representing Attorney General over there. You go there, you find Minister of Finance, who does most of the procurements in this country, having a representative there. Then other people appointed by the president. Why would the single source procurement not be approved? If you read Section 40 of the Procurement Act, you will see that most, not all, the procurements that are done single source are all illegal, because the law provides the conditions under which a procurement activity qualifies to be single source. And those conditions are usually ignored. All that we see is there is an approval. So it is a state issue, a state-sponsored issue. Until we reform and change and move away from this, I'm afraid we are not going to make much progress as a country.
When you were Auditor General, the members of the board at the time, I'm sure you recall them, were they also appointed by government?
All of them without exception. And the interesting thing is that the board chairman, Professor Addo, who is still there, was working at the office of the senior minister. So he was appointed as the board chairman. When we went to court in the case of Crow and Associates, both at the High Court and the Supreme Court, anytime Honorable Asafo Mafu was not in court, it was the board chairman who was representing Asafo Mafu against the Auditor General. Can you imagine that madness? Except in Ghana, that such a thing can happen. Strange that the board chairman of the audit service is on the side of the auditee, not the auditor. Why? Because he's working, or he was working for the senior minister. But I know his office, his door is just about 2 doors away from that of the senior minister. They are in the same building, and he works for the senior minister.
Did you perchance, when you were Auditor General, did you perchance query this arrangement?
That was not within my mandate.
Did you suggest that maybe something could have been done about it?
Yes, I could not question who the senior minister wants to work with, or who represents the senior minister in court when I'm getting in the case.
I am not talking about the case. I'm talking of the board of, the board where you served as Auditor General. Did you ever make any?
The appointment of the members of the board is in the Constitution. It is a constitutional provision. That is what the law says. So you can't question it. I can't question something which is done lawfully.
Can we revise this going forward? Can we revise this going forward? Because obviously there will be conflict of interest sometimes.
Of course, this is an institution established to provide oversight about over financial management of the executive, hold them accountable. Then you bring the same person you are holding accountable is the one who constitutes the board. It's definitely not the best. So if there's an opportunity for reform, I think the board should be made outside the control and appointment of government. We can have even institutional representation on it. Currently, there are only 2 institutions that are represented on it. That is the Auditor General himself and the head of civil service. We need other institutions which are not under the control of the government. For instance, the Institute of Chartered Accountants should be represented on that board. Ghana Bar Association could be represented on that board. What do you call it? Those procurement professionals, they have an association. I've forgotten the name. Institute of Procurement or whatever it is, they can be represented. Academia can be represented on that board and not appointed by the president or chosen by the president. Even if the appointment is supposed to be done by the president, the selection or the choosing of the people to come there should not be within president.
The constitution is such that the president wields a lot of power. Now, if he is also directly responsible for, if you like, nominating individuals who will be serving on the board, for example, and that with, for example, an agency like the Public Procurement Authority, you could easily have situations where even people on the board can influence everyday decisions. Now, when you have a situation like this, surely we're going to be having a very corrupt situation.
Not that they can, they do. They actually influence the decisions. That's why I was doing the procurement audit. I was going to expose them because about 90% of the approvals that they gave for single source procurement or restricted tendering did not meet the requirement of the law. In fact, the law did not give them power to give approval for single source procurement. This is what Ghanaians don't understand. The law gave them the power based upon some conditions. One of them is when the item is urgently needed because there's an emergency or a disaster or something of that nature. We can't wait and go through the procurement process. You can say, go ahead and do it. 2, when the item is produced by only one person, there are no other sources. So there's going to be no competition in the first place. 3, when there is the need for compatibility, for instance, you bought a set of maybe IT equipment and you want to expand it, and there is a need for it to be able to, the addition to be compatible with what you already have, you can get that approval. If there is national security reasons. So those conditions are there. But about 90% or more of the approval they give do not meet any of these requirements. So that is why I was doing the audit to show to Ghanaians that they themselves have turned themselves into accomplices. They don't give approval. They are part of the criminal process of violating the procurement law.
Maybe these are the reasons why you were hounded out then.
Of course, yes. I know.
Well, I'm sure you've moved on and you're getting on with your life at this point. You have a lot on your plate, I'm told, these days. But let's have a look at the role of the special prosecutor, for example. I mean, that office was set up to, manage all kinds of issues. And key amongst some of these things are issues surrounding corrupt acts or corrupt activities. Generally, what would you make of the performance of Kisie Jabing?
Well, let me first and foremost be honest with you and confess that when I was in office as Auditor General, that is when this bill was updated or was being put in place. And I was not enthused about it at all. I opposed it because I thought creating too many anti-graft institutions is not the solution to our fight. Our fight is a leadership problem. If, for instance, we think that there are some things to be done which are not being done, let's read the mandates of the anti-corruption institution so that we finance them and get them to, because creating a full institution like the OSP is expensive in what we refer to in public financial management as wasteful and fruitless expenditure. If we can use 2 people to do some work and you bring 5 people to do the same work, you may be wasting money. So I was not one of those who were enthused about the creation of the Office of Special Prosecutor. But it was created. And I said to myself, well, if that is what it takes for us to fight corruption and corruption-related activities, why not? Let's go forward. So I put that behind me. So you notice I was working hand in hand with Honorable Martin Amidu. We even agreed to collaborate, to work together. And some things that he did, the audit service did the investigation for him. And then we passed it on. And he did a needful act of that. And unfortunately, he came out to tell us how his performance or his functions was being disturbed or he was being frustrated by no less an office than the office of the president itself. So he went or he resigned. Then came in Kisie Jabing, and everybody or many people expected that he will be an agent of the executive, or forgetting the word I wanted to use, more or less being used, a puppet of the presidency or whatever it is. But he proved to be different. He proved to be independent, and he seems to be doing work and see the frustrations. And he does his work, and he is subjected to criticisms like nobody's business. But I think the young man has done well. To be honest with you, those who have not occupied state positions, they don't know what it is. You wake up in the morning and you are thinking about your own survival, not in terms of occupying the office. I mean, your own safety. And how to perform in that environment or under those conditions is very difficult. So I have a lot of respect for the young man, but he has kept the fight on, and he's moving on irrespective of what people think or do to him. And I think I can only say kudos to him, and I wish him well in the fight. Today, his office is about the only office that we can think about when it comes to the fight against corruption. So he should keep the fight on. I know, like I said several times, and you might have heard, corruption will fight him and has started fighting him. But he shouldn't give up, because if we give up, corruption will finish all of us.
Are you in any way suggesting, and here I want to choose my words carefully, that because of the kind of people you may be investigating or the kind of deals you may be working, there might be people who might even come at you physically?
Yes. Not that one. I don't know if you have heard me always say that once you first fight corruption, corruption will fight you back.
You just said that.
Corruption is very shameless. Once they steal from the public funds, once they have the benefit of or the fruits of corruption, they become very powerful. They know how to engage the legal system. They have enough money to get the best of lawyers to defend them. If you see the case, for instance, of Crowe and Associates, there were two powerful lawyers on the other side defending Crowe and Associates and Honorable Osafo Mafufu. Today they are all Supreme Court of Appeal judges. You know that? The two lawyers who were defending the case at the High Court during Crowe and Associates, the two of them have been appointed to the Court of Appeal. They didn't even come through High Court. They jumped straight to Court of Appeal. And the judge herself is also now at the Court of Appeal. So once you fight corruption, it's dangerous. They will come at you physically, spiritually, every means that they can use. And at times they may use even the judiciary to come after you. The law enforcement agencies will come after you. So I know Kisio Jabi is facing a lot of things. The legal battle that you may be hearing is not all. His life is itself is in danger. I'm not saying that I'm aware of any specific, but once you are at the forefront of fighting corruption, people would like to eliminate you through whatever means. At times your life, at times you leaving the office. I heard somebody has gone to court again to determine the constitutionality of his office. And I laughed. And I said, this is very normal. Once you fight corruption, corruption will continuously fight you.
Did you at any point in time feel that your life was at stake?
I always knew.
Really?
I always knew. But even before taking the job, I knew that I was going to put my life at stake because I was going to fight corruption. I was working for an international organization before appointed Auditor General. And I, for fear of committing a diplomatic offense, I will not mention the name of the country. But just about 6 months before I was appointed the Auditor General, I was acting as the country manager and the head of the anti-corruption agency in that country. There had been a scandal, came to my office and we had a meeting. And at the end of the meeting, I told him that, my brother, put the country first. I know they have offered you very good things, extended a lot of courtesies to you, and they have promised you heaven on earth. But think about your people. As you drive home, look at the people on the streets. Look at how your people are suffering and defend the national interest instead of your interest. He said, yes, I agree with you. The gentleman, we finished the meeting. When he reached the door, he opened the door to go. He turned and looked back at me and said, sir, I will defend the national interest. And I was very happy that, whoa, this guy is going to do the needful. Less than 40 minutes after the meeting, I got a call that he had been kidnapped at their gate. And as he was leaving office, there were gunmen who kidnapped him. So they didn't know where they had put him. About 2-3 hours later, I got the message that he had been killed. So less than 3 hours from our meeting, he was a dead person because he did not yield to the offers that was given him by the government. They were going to make him an ambassador and give him a huge sum of money to run with. So I knew that fighting corruption was dangerous. And I asked myself if I was ready to die for fighting corruption. And I said yes before taking the position.